So I first got interested in cinema when I was living in Sarajevo. So after I finished my undergrad education, I went and taught English in Sarajevo for a couple of years. And something I noticed was that when I was there, it was between 2004 and 2006, so the unemployment rate was still quite high, and there was this kind of general feeling of stagnation surrounding the international community sort of holding the place together, that it wasn't really kind of politically functioning. And so it wasn't, you could see, traces from the war, on buildings and things like that. So in that way, it was sort of still very much kind of hanging over. But the Sarajevo Film Festival, which happens every August and which started during the war, during the siege, that was this one moment in the year when the whole city seemed to come to life, and it seemed to have a really completely different atmosphere to it, where it seemed like Sarajevo all of a sudden became a cultural center in a way that it hadn't been since the war. I think everybody otherwise sort of looked back to the peak era of like 1984 when they hosted the Winter Olympics. And so when I left the region and I went and I did my project in Kazakhstan, and I decided after I finished that project I wanted to come back to the region because I missed going there. I wanted to do a project that wasn't focused on the sort of what I saw as being the kind of dominant narratives of war, disintegration, the kind of depressive atmosphere. And so I wanted to sort of hook onto something that maybe would give a more kind of hopeful story of the region. And so that's how I decided to start. And at the same time, from having spent time there, and I was married for a few years to a Bosnian who was very interested in film. And so it also seemed like a topic that was important to people, that people were interested in talking about cinema, that they had general knowledge about it. So it wasn't just something where it would be like a film studies project, but something where I could think about sort of how does film matter to people. And so then I started going back to the region and looking at different events, and I thought that I was going to be focusing more on international co-productions as a way that because of all this fracturing, each industry is quite small, so they depend a lot on co-productions within the region and then also abroad. But just to sort of learn about that whole landscape of the industry seemed like it was going to take time. And in the meantime, I found out about these socialist era film clubs where there was this idea that anybody should be able to make a film, that's sort of a right that every citizen should have. That was really strong under socialist Yugoslavia, and that in most places, including Sarajevo, seemed to sort of fall apart, but that there were places like Zagreb, Belgrade, and Split where those film scenes, the amateur film clubs had been really strong and had cultivated this experimental film scene, and that those did manage to kind of survive all of the transition and everything. And so I got to know some of them, and so I sort of shifted my focus to that, which I think ethnographically was more interesting to spend time doing, because I could